Hello, everyone. We'll get started shortly. We're just letting folks in. Okay, let's get started. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Rochelle Isaac from the English Department and President of Faculty Council. Thank you for joining us. As usual, we will be muting everybody to avoid static and background noise. Please note that the town hall is being recorded and a link to the recording will be circulated shortly. Today's town hall is focused primarily on enrollment, and not only do we have President Adams with us, we also have Interim Associate Dean for Enrollment Management, Gail Bass-Jarrett, and Digital Communications Manager, KYDEX Nunez. Before we get started, I'd like to thank those of you who submitted questions, as well as our sign language interpreters for their assistance today. Please submit additional questions in the chat, and we will get to as many as we can after we've heard from our guest. President Adams is going to start us off, and then we'll have from Gail and then from KYDEX. Hello, President Adams.
Hi, Rochelle. Thank you very much. Thanks for the introduction, and thank you in advance for hosting our town hall on enrollment today. It's always a pleasure to work with you on these events. And I, like you, I also want to recognize our American Sign Language interpreters who are helping today, Mary Jo Hennessy and Jennifer Ward Schultz. Just a brief comment on the format here. I'm going to do a quick presentation on where we are with enrollment and its implications for our budget, and then turn it over to the experts, as Rochelle has pointed out, Interim Associate Dean Dr. Gail Bass-Jarrett and Caridad Munoz, who are going to do special presentations, enrollment strategies and tactics and marketing, special marketing and outreach work that we're doing. And then we'll have time, of course, for Q&A. So all throughout this town hall, please use the chat to submit questions. And as we've done in the past, Rochelle will dig into the chat and she will pull out questions that we can try to address in the limited amount of time we have this afternoon. So again, thanks, Rochelle, for doing that kind of on the fly. Again, let's just get started by sort of taking a look at where we are. Could we turn to the first slide? Thank you. First, let's recognize something we've spoken about before. We'll just update it. And this is the unfortunate and downward trend in community college enrollment, which is a national phenomenon, but this is what it looks like here in New York City at CUNY. If you can see the fine print here of almost 100,000 students enrolled in the CUNY community colleges in 2015, but barely 74,000, 75,000 today. So that's a 25, obviously, you lose 25,000 students across those 7 community colleges, you're talking about a 25% drop. More to the point of COVID and the pandemic, if you go to the column that says 2019, we had about 92,000 students across the CUNY community colleges. Today, again, 74,400 plus or minus. I'm sorry, this is 2021. That is right there, a 19% drop. So the drop in enrollment across CUNY has been precipitous and just much more intense in the community colleges than in the four-year schools and the graduate schools. I will note that the CUNY system overall this spring, where we are today, is looking at an average drop of about 8%. But as you'll see in a second, it's the community colleges that are suffering the greatest declines in enrollment. Let's go to the next slide. Specific to LaGuardia, since that last slide was all CUNY community colleges, here's the news for LaGuardia. Again, you've seen some of this before, but one of the things we can do this afternoon is update it since we've now begun the spring semester. The numbers tell the story. Again, about 15, almost 16,000 students in the fall of 2019 here at LaGuardia before the pandemic. And then you see during the pandemic how our numbers start to drop to the point where we now, spring 22, we haven't finished because we're only a week into the semester. This number is not a final number yet, but you can see that we're at about 10,500 students today. Doesn't take a math major to figure out if you go from about 15,000 students to 10,000 students from before the pandemic to today, that's like losing a third of our students. But there's really no way to sugarcoat this. It's a new world for us. I mean, to lose a third of our students from fall of 19 to where we are today is a significant drop in enrollment. And again, it's the new world that we're in part because of the pandemic, in part because of enrollment trends that you see even predate the pandemic. Let's take a look at the next slide. So we're not alone in this cold comfort, I suppose, but we are not alone among those 7 CUNY community colleges suffering significant enrollment declines. You can see here this chart tracks enrollment in CUNY community colleges semester to semester, meaning spring 21, a year ago right now, to spring 22, where we are today, with the caveat that our numbers are not fully locked in yet for the spring semester. BMCC at the top of the chart, there's 16% drop year over year in enrollment. Hostos, 12% drop. We're at about 11%. Queensboro, our neighbors out in Bayside, 15%. The average, as you can see in the bottom row of the chart, for the 7 CUNY community colleges is a 12% drop year over year, spring 21 to spring 22. We are a little less than that average, so we're doing a little better, you could say, but it's still significant. Let's go to the next one. So why is all this happening? Again, we've talked about this, and 6 bullet points doesn't tell the full story. But as I've said before, I firmly believe that LaGuardia has been particularly hard hit by the economic hardship caused by the pandemic for our students and their families. Remember, of course, that our LaGuardia students come from the neighborhoods in Queens hardest hit by the pandemic. Jackson Heights, Elmhurst, Corona, Jamaica. I mean, go across the borough and look at where we get our students from. These are communities that were very hard hit by the pandemic, both from the health crisis of the pandemic, but then from the economic hardship or the economic impact of the pandemic, which has left so many of our students in a very precarious financial position, where right now they've been facing this dilemma of, do I work to support my family, pay that back rent, help my family get back on its feet, or do I re-enroll in LaGuardia, or do I enroll in college at all? And so we're seeing, again, largely this I think is the biggest driver of our loss of returning students would be the economic hardships. But beyond that, there is a problem, which is a reduced pool of high school graduates. There's a terrific researcher, professor at the CUNY Graduate Center named Paul Atwell, and he did a major study, this came out in the fall, of what was happening to New York City DOE high school students during the pandemic. It's a long report we don't have time for this afternoon, but one of his conclusions was that for those students, all of those students in that online high school experience, they missed out on so many things that normally help drive them to college. They missed out on that discussion in the lunchroom about who's going where. They missed out seeing the posters in the hallway that get you excited about going to City College or whatever it might be. They missed out on the face-to-face contact with high school guidance counselors. And his research sort of concluded that there is this huge pool of students that might have finished high school online, and this would be the current students that are in high school right now are back on campus, of course, but if they were finishing up in 2020 or 2021, they had no Regents exams, they had very little face-to-face instruction, very little kind of high school experience, and that has really derailed them academically. It's a very serious problem we've got to look at here at LaGuardia about how we can get those students back on an educational pathway. But again, it hurts the pool of students that we're trying to recruit from. The transition to online instruction was a factor for a good number of our students who got, as we all know the story, they kind of got Zoom fatigue, online LaGuardia fatigue, and stopped out, dropped out. We got to bring them back for the fall semester and bring them back to a welcoming, supportive in-person experience. Again, for those that for whom online just didn't work. Of course, we have students for whom it did work, but we're very concerned about those we lost because they couldn't manage successfully the transition to online classes during this COVID period. You know, normally our admissions and outreach staff do a lot of work in the community where they're going to high schools, they're going to community-based organizations to talk about LaGuardia and to attract students to our programs. Couldn't do that, obviously, during COVID. We couldn't do the outreach, the face-to-face, and that put some constraints on our recruitment of students. Very hard to give a virtual campus tour. You know, you can try this using the website and digitally that has the same appeal to a high school grad or someone who hasn't been in college for a long time as a real in-person college tour would do. When you cannot bring people to campus because of a global pandemic, you lose a very important recruitment tool, which is that face-to-face, in-person, seeing the library, seeing other students, being able to visualize what this place will be like when I come to LaGuardia. We couldn't do that during the pandemic. That's a real constraint for our enrollment team. Of course, we're beyond that now. And finally, vaccine mandates. Honestly, especially at the beginning, we had a lot of students who were vaccine hesitant, didn't want to get the vaccines, and or couldn't deal with all of the CUNY policies around uploading vaccination status. And, you know, by now we've institutionalized that. By now we have most of that under control. But let's not forget that early on, or even as much as a year ago, this was a big new hurdle for many of our students. Let's look at the next slide. Actually, before we do this, I promised at the outset I would briefly mention where we are with our budget. So let me talk about the budget, and then I'll give you some details on where we are with the federal stimulus, because the federal stimulus funding, this is a very hard chart for me to read, so small, but the federal stimulus funding is essential for our financial health institutionally. You know, the bottom line is that for the current fiscal year, which ends June 30th, our basic operating expenses are approximately $131 million. And let's remember that doesn't include a lot of important expenses that the city of New York takes care of for us, like all of our fringe, rent, utilities, things like that. But think 131 million. And that's greatly reduced because we have been very careful managing our expenses. So we are predicting that we will bring in 110 million from our various funding sources, the city, the state, tuition, paid largely through financial aid, of course. So 131 minus 110 leaves you with a gap of about $21 million. I call that a structural operating deficit. It's not all related to reduced enrollment, but a lot of it is. For this fiscal year, the federal stimulus money, it's in some of these rows on the chart before you, will help us fill that gap. That is to say, we have a budget deficit of 21 million, but the CUNY central office will be allocating to us 21 million in federal stimulus aid so that we can balance our budget this year. For next year, the challenge will be closing that structural deficit with hopefully new revenue sources from the city and the state, and by rebuilding our enrollment, the subject of the rest of this presentation. And now just on this slide, I do want to point out, there's some important things here. If you see the very top row, it's in red, federal funds, $92 million for LaGuardia of federal stimulus spread over the 3 fiscal years impacted by the pandemic. So that's fiscal year 20, 21, and this current fiscal year. It's hard to imagine how we would have endured without that $92 million. But fundamentally, it's even harder to imagine the impact on our students, because most of that money was paid directly to students for whatever they needed in the form of emergency aid. And there was not an obligation, by the way. We were not allowed to ask them to use it to pay tuition. That's purely an option that's baked into the federal law. Some students might have opted to pay down some of their tuition with it, but they could use it for rent, for food, whatever they needed. So that's where most of the federal aid went, directly to students, right through their CUNY First accounts. We don't even see the money. But these other categories are important. You can look at this later. our training, our technology. Revenue loss is the sort of general category. You'll see this for FY22 where it says in the section at the bottom, that's our current, CRISA and ARPA are the current stimulus funds we have left. FY22, that 19 million, you guess where that's going, to our bottom line. So the federal, so this chart just again to illustrate the utmost importance of federal stimulus, to remind you that much of it goes directly to students, and then a good portion of it, thankfully, can be used for revenue loss, which is, again, our budget deficit. Let's go to the next slide. Another thing we did, and I wanted just to give you an update on this afternoon, we, all through the pandemic, would appeal to the Board of Auxiliary, LaGuardia Auxiliary, to get allocations of auxiliary funds to help students with outstanding balances. There was the CUNY comeback at one point. The CUNY comeback, you may recall, was using money for unpaid balances. That was a system-wide policy and a very helpful one, of course. But before and after CUNY comeback, we used auxiliary funds to help students if they had a balance. So that's about $1.4 million to 1,800 students for over $700 per student. So it was another way we helped our students out during the pandemic. This is key to enrollment, obviously, because without this, many students could not have afforded to stay in school. Let's finish up here. I want to talk a little bit, if we can see the next slide, about what we're hoping for the new fiscal year. Again, it starts on July 1st. Obviously, well, you see the two pictures there. There's no snow, but that beautiful 19th century castle of a building is the Albany State Capitol, often even in March covered in snow. And the building on the right, of course, City Hall. So up in Albany, building on the left, H.H. Richardson, architect, that building, that is where Governor Kathy Hochul has proposed a very important reform to TAP, the State Tuition Assistance Program. What she has proposed in the executive budget is making TAP available for part-time students. Remember, half of our LaGuardia students go to LaGuardia part-time, but you have to jump through hoops right now. You have to actually go full-time for a year and have 24 credits to then apply for part-time TAP, which makes no sense. So she's removing the barrier and going to make it a 6 credit. If you're doing just 2 classes, 6 credits, you can get TAP, which again, you currently can't do. This is estimated to help at least 75,000 students. Again, in LaGuardia's case, half of our students go part-time. It's very hard for them to access TAP, the State Tuition Assistance Program. The governor's proposal will do that. On the enrollment side, that's really important for retention of our part-time students. It's also really important because we can then recruit who otherwise wouldn't come to LaGuardia this fall, because if they can't get financial aid and they want to go part-time, they wouldn't be able to come to the college. So this proposal to expand TAP is really important. By the way, there's a part of the proposal that makes TAP available for certain workforce training programs over an ACE, another game changer, because students can then enter the college to pursue a degree. With respect to the city budget, the mayor has proposed cuts to city agencies overall, but there are many special programs that get funded by the city and the city council, like ASAP and other initiatives that are critical to our success. So we're hoping for generous budget support for the new fiscal year from both the mayor and the governor. I might add the governor's proposal has several other elements in it that are important specifically for community colleges, not the least of which is what we call a hold harmless, meaning since normally our base aid is based on FTEs or full-time enrollment of students, when you have declining enrollment, you would have fewer FTEs, so you would get reduced base aid by the math, right? But the governor's proposing, and I believe the legislature supports this, a hold harmless, meaning we would get 100% of what we got last year, even if we have fewer students. That's a very important provision. So the state budget, by the way, is done in 2 weeks. Let's hope. It should. The state budget starts April 1st, so we should get good news, I hope, I'm optimistic here, from the state, from the governor and the legislature by April 1st on support for LaGuardia. The city budget takes, the city fiscal year is different. There's a little more time there because obviously the fiscal year for this city doesn't start until July 1st. Okay, one last slide, and then I'm done. Although, well, I welcome later on any of your questions, of course. So when I said before, I'm optimistic about enrollment recovery, I mean, look, I'm both realistic about where we are and why we are where we are. I've described that. But yes, I'm optimistic about rebuilding our enrollment. You're about to learn more about the strategies and tactics for that and things that we're doing from Gail and from Caridad. But I think there are at least 3 unique enrollment solutions for LaGuardia. And when I say unique, these are no other colleges, sorry to sound competitive here, but no other CUNY community colleges have these 3 very special opportunities. The first is our foundation. Now, you know, we're running this $15 million Tomorrow campaign to raise money for LaGuardia students, the results of which will be tallied up at the end of March. The campaign ends March 31st. So stay tuned for news about the campaign in early April. But we're doing well. And let's just say this, that campaign, the amazing work of our LaGuardia Foundation, has positioned the college to provide a level of emergency financial aid, scholarship money, and paid internships to our continuing and new students that is unprecedented in the CUNY system. There's no other community college doing what we're doing to provide special support to our students, especially because of the hardships caused by the pandemic, because of what we've done with the foundation fundraising. So that's going to give us a unique edge because we can get students in to LaGuardia and keep our students with those extra resources that we have raised. The ACE pipeline. LaGuardia, you've heard me say this before, we have the largest adult and continuing education program in all of CUNY. We are the largest provider of workforce training in CUNY. We have right now a very strong enrollment recovery, stronger statistically or by percentages than our enrollment in the college. By that, I mean, if you look at the TELC, the English Language Learning Center, where we teach ESL, our enrollment is up this quarter, our winter program right now, by more than 200%. And we have 814 students in ESL in the TELC alone, and hundreds more in carpentry and healthcare and IT. Last year, we had 5,000 students in ACE. So the ACE pipeline, we are better positioned than any other CUNY college to help those students who start out in a non-credit program, start out in GED or ESL, convert over and become degree-seeking students and enroll in the college. So we're going to double down on that pipeline and do everything we can to increase that flow of students from ACE into the college. We're going to be working on that throughout the spring and summer to drive fall enrollment. Again, because we have the largest ACE program in CUNY, we are the best positioned college to pull this off. And finally, something new. We made an announcement about this, but you'd be forgiven for not seeing it because it's we send out a lot of emails. But we have $1 million grant from the Robin Hood Foundation, secured by our provost, Paul Arcario, and Sunil Gupta, our VP for adult and continuing education. They worked together, both academic affairs and ACE, to create this initiative we call Credits for Success. This is a pilot project unique in CUNY, where we're going to set up a dedicated office to award credit for prior learning to people out there in New York City who have some college credit but never finished their degree. And they may even have an outstanding balance. 3 pieces to this. One is this new office will work with our academic chairs and program directors, deans and others to award credit for industry certifications, military service, and a whole slew of exams recognized now by the new CUNY policy, credit for prior learning, to get those students back into college to complete their degree. Do you know, this is remarkable, there are more than 700,000 people in New York City that started college but never finished. They have some credit and no degree. And we don't need all 700,000 to fix our enrollment problem. We'll just take a small percentage. But what we're going to do is have the special office dedicated to serving this student, this type of student, often an older student, often a part-time student. That's where we bring in the governor's new financial aid. Often a student that is going part-time because they have to work and support their family. We'll have a special office devoted to them. We're launching this now. We're going to really ramp this up over the spring and summer. And then finally, because of the foundation support, if that student has a balance, and that's why they had stopped going to college, the foundation will step up to pay down that unpaid balance. So we take away the financial barriers to going back and getting your degree. We can even provide ongoing financial scholarships and support if you're out of your government financial aid. But most importantly, we give you credits and a jump start, right? We recognize your prior achievement and we give you this jump start towards your associate degree. 3 initiatives, there are others, but I wanted to focus on these today that we have at LaGuardia and other schools starting to say don't have. They're allowed to copy us. We'll help them down the road if they're inspired by our work. But these are just 3 of several initiatives we're going to work on really hard this spring and summer to rebuild our LaGuardia enrollment. And with that, I'll close out, Rochelle, and I think turn it back to you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think Gail is up though.
Well, then we'll give it over to Gail.
Yes.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
President Adams recently showed a slide regarding our enrollment, and for fall 21, we had an enrollment that was a little above 13,000. So I wanted to share some data on how we achieved that enrollment. Next slide. Fall 21, we had 19,000 plus applications for admissions, and over 9,000 of these students were tested by our testing office. Now here's the biggest number that we have. Our Student Information Center reached out to students. 161,000 instances of text, email, and phone calls were completed for our fall 21 semester. Postcards were sent to prospective students and stop-outs. Now, stop-outs are students who may have attended our college for 1 semester in the past, a year or 2 or 3. And so we mailed them postcards. I know it's snail mail, but it really works. We've seen some positive results with that. Specialized and personalized outreach are provided by our enrollment coaches. So through live chat, Zoom, as well as the personal meetings on the one-on-one, these were virtual for fall 21. And so that's how we were able to achieve our enrollment target for fall 21. Next slide. We have some challenges, and we recognized those challenges last summer. We partnered with CUNY, CUNY overall partnered with the College and Career Bridge for All program that works with the New York City Department of Education. And these were some critical areas that they identified, which we also identified from our students who provided feedback to us last summer. Timely customer service, high volume and limited staff constraints in a timely response. We had students that reported waiting for service in our virtual office over an hour, in some cases an hour and a half. We had students that were challenged by our registration processes, and they required, excuse me, guidance from our enrollment coaches and staff in recruitment, admissions, and testing to guide them through the process. In terms of our enrollment processes, as you well know, excuse me, 1 second. In terms of our enrollment processes, uploading documents both for admissions, for missing docs, as well as financial aid to complete the process called verification. So that was a challenge for some of our students. And the application, as you well know, in terms of financial aid requires multiple steps. So it's complex, and our students do need some hands-on guidance in regard to that, which we were able to provide virtually. But it's a lot for students who are the first in their family to go to college and don't have that guidance from a family member to help them along. We also had communication issues with students where they were receiving multiple communications on issues that left them confused. And so these were the challenges that we identified last summer. Next slide. Those challenges allowed us to have the opportunity to show what we can do to meet our students' needs. We have a really hardworking and committed staff that deal with a high volume of students and complex processes across enrollment services, and truly amazing staff that go above and beyond to meet students' needs, even working on weekends and volunteering, on holidays so that they could provide timely response to students. More in-person assistance for our students because we came back to campus last summer, about 50% of us. And so it's allowed us to see students in person and to have that personal engagement with us. We're still offering our virtual services and processes because it does work for some of our students. And we're looking to see how we can sustain both the in-person and the virtual services going forward. And our website and enrollment marketing, KYDEX will speak more to that in her presentation, but the students are finding that our website are now friendly and the information are accessible. And we've invested more in terms of our marketing strategies for our prospective applicants. Fall 22, what are our key strategies? Well, we have vacancies in enrollment services, and a critical one is the director of admissions. We are currently close to finalizing that process and hope to hire this individual very soon, because we do need this individual to lead the efforts that we've outlined for fall 22. Our timely responses at this point in time do not exceed 48 hours in terms of emails. In terms of our virtual in-person visits, it is less than 30 minutes per student. On the average, it's about 20 minutes. So we've made progress there. This is from last summer to now. Our communication with students are now highly personalized, and it's enhanced for specific issues for that particular student. So it's not a floodgate of here's all the steps you need to know about enrollment. It is targeted to that individual student's needs. So we are offering personalized assistance. Again, this is where our enrollment coaches come in, where they're meeting with students on an individual basis and communicating with them on what the next step is. We have always invited faculty to participate in our information sessions as we are back on campus at 70% in terms of in-person staffing. Starting next month, we will be resuming our in-person information sessions, and we are certainly would like to collaborate with our faculty on our recruitment events coming up. Our recruiters will be resuming our high school visits and our community visits, as well as we partner with many members of our local community. And here, our website, we've made sure that it's accessible in terms of the students on their smartphones, as well as being ADA compliant. And we are investing more in enrollment marketing and building on the successes that we've had this past year. So those are the key strategies that we have in play right now for fall 22.
Thank you, Dr. Gail Bash-Jarrett. And now we'll hear from our digital communications marketing manager. Go ahead, KYDEX.
Thank you, Rochelle, and thank you, Gail. So enrollment marketing and advertising has grown significantly. In 2019, LaGuardia advertising budget was $0. And in 2020, modest investments were made that yield into a positive result. In 2021 and into our current 2022, we are grateful to have LaGuardia invest more in recruitment, advertising, And the entire marketing and communication team is committed to planning, designing, and analyzing our campaign. We work in partnership with other departments at the college, recruitment, and Shannon, who has become my immediate team chat partner in crime. I'm going to take you to some recent campaigns that we have, and also current campaigns and some data results about our metrics. So oftentimes we hear people say that they constantly see ads for other colleges, but not for LaGuardia, which leads many to think that we are not advertising in support of recruitment. While that was true before, but I can assure you that we had ads running in a smart way, in a healthy mix of platform. And in order to truly target prospective students, we suppress people that are affiliated with LaGuardia from being included on our target audience. So if you're a staff or a faculty, chances are that you're not going to see our advertisement that is catered or target to a prospective student. And in order for us to truly target prospective, and what you see here on the screen are a few examples of our recent campaign targeting prospective students via Google, Facebook, and Instagram. We work with recruitment staff, as I mentioned before, to feature upcoming info sessions, application deadline and assistant, and also to drive a student to our website. Digital ad allows to track prospective student activity and provide us with data metrics about who clicks on what, and also headline that work best, and so on. So marketing and communication keeps, enhancing and working on feature on the advertising campaign daily. And what you can see on the screen, those were ads that were running for spring and currently also for fall 2022. The image on the top right was an advertising for an info session this past December 11, where we got 120 registered. And this ad was created in Spanish. Next is our prospective student, again, more advertisement that we are doing. Once a prospective student click on an ad, they are often directed to a custom built landing page with align us to track their activity, and also a guide the students to create or look at content that is targeted to them based on the campaign design. Other advertisements are aimed to capture the contact information of a prospective student, who then they will receive an email communication from us over the course of about 6 weeks. And these different methods are used in conjunction with target audiences, who then they will, students who needs more information about LaGuardia, or they need to apply. For example, a high school student may need information about LaGuardia before applying, where the student that is already applied, they may need assistance or taking the next step or accepting LaGuardia offer of admission. The visual that you see on the screen in this slide are also our admitted and not committed campaign. What does mean is that a student who apply via the CUNY application, but they are not registered at the college. We download data from CUNY first in our data store to target that particular audience. And as President Adam mentioned before, distant learning during the pandemic has broken a person-to-person connection, and that has kept many students from enrolling. And recent data indicates a bit, dropout of male population, especially Latinos and African American. And as you can see from our ad visual, we try to engage and connect with this population. And this is for the spring 2022 semester. Next. In addition to our digital advertising, we are also use traditional offline campaign to reach the different community in Queens. Bilingual postcard were mailed to just about 4,000 continuing students. I think Gail mentioned that, to persuade them to register for the spring. And in addition to appealing to a student, this message was likely also seen by other household member, parents, or anyone in the family who might also encourage a student to register. And continuing with postcard, additionally, we were also sent out approximately 15,000 postcard to a student that previously stopped out of LaGuardia. And approximately 3,000 students that were eligible for readmission were contacting either via digital advertisement or postcard. For fall 2022, what is next? We are approximately targeting 61,000 from our data set that we have identified as individuals who are likely to pursue further education in a community college. And next, I'm pretty excited about this slide. So this past December, we started something new, which is broadcast advertising via radio and streaming media. We work with Iheart Media. And if you're not familiar with Iheart Media has over 150 million registered users, and it's available over 250 platforms and over 2,000 different connected devices. So meaning you can see it on your cars, mobile, Alexa, Google Home, and even on your Apple Watch. So the campaign that we created with Iheart Media was delivered to radio spot throughout New York City, and it used geolocation for a specific target audience. Plus, we used digital streaming via TikTok as well. Our early results were really promising. So more than 620,000 impressions and more than 2,400 interaction with Iheart Media campaign. So if you were driving to Queens or just crossing the Queensboro, chances are that you might hear the following on your radio. So I'm going to play this right now.
LaGuardia Community College is where your future begins. For 50 years, LaGuardia has educated and graduated thousands of students and supports you every step of the way. Visit laguardia.edu/apply to get started. With flexible classes, you'll find options that fit your busy schedule. Don't wait. Apply today at laguardia.edu/apply. Earn a rewarding degree for less. LaGuardia has more scholarship dollars available than ever before to help students pay for college. Plus, you'll learn from the best professors and be prepared for the job you want. Visit laguardia.edu/apply.
Perfect. Now, this was one of our radio spots that we were featuring through Iheart Media. Now, this April, we are starting a new campaign in Espanol with the Spanish broadcasting media, La Mega 97.9 and Amor 93.1. The campaign will air also radio spot in Spanish and will go through peak hour and popular radio shows. So this is very exciting. Now, this campaign is, again, it's going to be totally in Espanol and with a dedicated landing page, and our team will be able to do data tracking to see impressions and clicks through the entire campaign as well. Currently, our offline marketing campaign is sent to print and newspaper. And as you can see it on the screen, those are current Queens community newspaper where our campaigns are running. And it just happened that this morning I picked up one of the local newspaper, and what I got was a LaGuardia advertisement. This partnership do also help us maintain a positive relationship with publishers that often we send news story to be featured on. So we are very proud also to using our community newspaper for advertisement. And finally, campaign results. So this slide shows and represents some of our key metrics from last year, from our digital advertisement and also targeted pipeline and student. So this represents our collaboration with recruitment and also institutional research. Our total impression in an average is over 6 million impressions. What are impressions? They refer to the number of times our ad or content has been displayed on a screen, no matter if it was clicked or not. The reach is the total number of people who've seen our content, and the clicks are how many people clicks on our ad or landing pages. So usually viewers see the same content or ad several times before they take an action. And stunning to know, but our Google report for 2021 contains a stunning statistic of 4 million impressions with over 234,000 clicks on the zone. So thank you to our friends Jeff and Institutional Research for providing us with the total enrollment student for spring 2022. The 1328 data that you see, those were students enrolled for spring 2022. And this is a combination of social media advertisement plus pipeline admitted, not committed students that were reached out. And this data is just only from February to September for fall 2021. So we're happy to see positive results from our advertisement and from all our combination efforts throughout the entire college. And again, if you see our ad, be surprised and happy to see it. Thank you.
Thank you, KYDEX. We have questions in the chat and we have questions that were already submitted. And so I'm going to go pretty quickly. So this first question is for Gail. Peer advisors have supported outreach efforts targeted at next semester registration. Has there been any thought around enlisting alumni and current LaGuardia students in promoting overall enrollment at the college? For example, inviting these groups to provide pop-up events to our queens about particular degree programs, creating short videos about the academic or professional experiences to be shared widely via social media.
Every year, the admissions office hosts and employs several student workers who assist prospective students with their admissions applications. And these student workers, they're current students. They are funded through federal work-study grants, CUNY Edge, and Research Foundation. They make phone calls, conduct tours, and information sessions. Prior to the pandemic, they also accompanied the recruiters to the in-person recruitment events in Queens, and they took part in panel discussions for on-campus recruitment events, which we have resumed this month. They're also featured in our videos, ad campaigns, social media posts, and photo sessions to improve LaGuardia, to promote LaGuardia. So each semester, there's an open call to enlist the help of our students. Alumni have been a part of this promotion in the past, and we're looking to engage their participation again in fall 22.
Okay, another one for you, Gail. Did the college look into research on enrollment projections? Example, the Agile College, how institutions successfully navigate demographic changes to plan for the future?
We work with CUNY's Office of Applied Research Evaluation and Data Analytics on enrollment projections. The trend at LaGuardia mirrors other community colleges within CUNY and nationally before and during the pandemic. At LaGuardia, we've had a long-term enrollment declining in our continuing students that is reflected in lower retention rates, as well as an increase in our high school students, as President Adams mentioned earlier. So we are looking for opportunities to strengthen this area across the college.
Okay, this is for President Adams. If LaGuardia were to poll students as to their modality preferences, specifically asking them whether they prefer 1 in-person classes, 2 completely online classes, or 3 hybrid classes, we would tailor class offerings to our students' preferences and therefore increase enrollment. Would you consider conducting this poll, which is a bit more specific than the one previously distributed a year ago?
Yes, in fact, we're working on a new survey now. I got a draft of it yesterday from Na Valera, our Dean of Institutional Assessment. And so we are going to do a survey. I know the CUNY Central Office will be doing survey work too, so we don't want to duplicate that. But the answer is yes, we're very interested to learn about what our students want, what they're going to want for the fall in terms of modality. Okay.
And this question is from a faculty member in the natural sciences. I think maybe Gail will take this one. He's a member of the recruitment committee for the department, and he says for the last 2 years, we have been scheduling online events to recruit the students in collaboration with the LaGuardia recruitment office. My question is, are you considering giving permission to host an in-person recruitment event before fall 2022?
Absolutely. We plan to host in-person events on campus starting May 2022. So if there's any department faculty who would like to collaborate with our recruitment team, please contact Shannon Lund for details.
Great. Oh, and another one. Do we have any data on the role that the Proficiency Index and the CUNY ESL diagnostic for English language learners may be playing in the enrollment challenge at LaGuardia?
The Proficiency Index is used by CUNY to determine students' placement in a co-rec or college level course. I do not have data that indicates the Proficiency Index is correlated with our enrollment decline. As President Adams mentioned earlier, there are many factors that impact our enrollment. Students can still participate in our Math Start, CUNY Start, and First Year Institute program to improve their writing and math skills. I can also share with you that in fall 22, students without 3 years of high school data will be placed in a co-rec or college level course. The ESL diagnostic does not negatively affect our enrollment. In fact, I think it's a good tool. We have a higher number of students completing it compared to CUNY. For example, in spring 21, 85% of our students complete the assessment, while across CUNY, the average was 62%. So we're doing very well there.
Okay, thank you, Gail. So I'm going to the chat and we have some really good questions here. So this one is for President Adams. Can we use this information, I guess the information here today, to support the self-study, especially how CARES funding was used if it comes up during the Middle States visit?
Oh, yes. I mean, thank you to whoever put that question in the chat, because it's a reminder that the Middle States visit, the evaluation team, their virtual visit is next week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And by all means, we should share with them any and all of this information about enrollment, about our allocation of the CARES Act funding. Great question. Thanks for that.
So another one, I think maybe KYDEX could help us with this one. You mentioned neighborhoods where our students mostly come from. What are we doing to attract students from other neighborhoods to attend LaGuardia?
So we advertise not just on the Queens community area, but we use our big ratio of digital advertising through either Westchester, Bronx, Brooklyn, where we know the population of a student, are coming from. We use data to attract a student from all over the tri-state area. So it's not just the Queens area, but we try to get our ratio in Google and other platforms to target other specific neighborhoods.
Okay, thank you. Community outreach. We often hear about partnering with community organizations to broaden the reach of enrollment drive. In what ways is LaGuardia offering intentional mutual support to small organizations in the community as opposed to partnering to meet its own end?
Let me, if I may, Rochelle, try to answer. This again is where it's a very sort of important advantage that we have is the size and the reach of our ACE division, adult and continuing education, and also the move that we made recently to have our career services, CCPD, Career Counseling Professional Development, move from student affairs into ACE to strengthen all of our employer partnerships. But employers, by the way, are often community not-for-profits and city agencies and community-based organizations where our students get internships or where they can get jobs. Two-way street is having really powerful relationships with organizations all across Queens. So we're providing support to them. There's an aspect, by the way, of the Credit for Prior Learning Initiative that's important. I described it before, Credits for Success, funded by Robin Hood. That office is going to have community partners that are already doing, for example, IT training or healthcare training, and work with those partners so that their students can get LaGuardia credit. So that enriches their program offerings at the local level. So as the person who asked the question said, yes, this is a two-way street. It's LaGuardia helping organizations all across Queens and beyond that are serving all these communities. And it's then those organizations, when it's appropriate, introducing us to potential new LaGuardia students, helping us with recruitment. It's a way to really double down on as I say this before, but the second word of our name, community, right? LaGuardia Community College, and to really live out that obligation we have as an anchor institution in Queens to build those partnerships, serve those organizations, and yes, when possible, obviously have students that come from those organizations join our ranks for sure.
Mhm. I think this one's for you too, President Adams. How are we leveraging all that makes LaGuardia academically unique as a community college? Example, opportunities to do research with faculty, robust peer mentoring support, major specific FYS courses, urban studies, e-portfolio, range of languages taught, etc.
Okay, it's a really important question. Let me use it to sort of say two things. Remind us that enrollment is, we got to think of it in two levels: the retention of our current students and the recruitment of new students. And in that sense, all of us are responsible for retention because all of us do things to create a great student experience for our currently enrolled students. I like to say to make LaGuardia sticky, so it's a hard place to leave. So all of us, you can think about various ways that you support students, that you do things to give students a great experience. And that has two positive effects. It helps student retention, but it also makes them satisfied, happy students that tell other people and other students, hey, LaGuardia is really cool. LaGuardia is great. You should apply to LaGuardia. So students, happy, successful students are our best sales force, if you will. So all of us that help create a great student experience help retain students, and then those retained students, they succeed, they graduate, they move on, but they also tell their friends, and it helps us with recruitment. The other part of enrollment is what Gail's been talking about. Everything we do, and what KYDEX been explaining, to make LaGuardia attractive to new students, and then getting those students to apply, and then helping them with financial aid, with registration, with picking a program of study, and all the rest. So it's always a balancing act, all the things we do to retain our current students, and then all the things we do in recruitment and admissions to attract new students. And I again would point out that we all help with retention, but while we think of people in admissions and recruitment and marketing like KYDEX that work on attraction of students, we all can help with that as well. Yes, we have dedicated professionals do student recruitment, but we can all find ways to promote LaGuardia, to talk it up, and to help recruit new students as well. So to the question here about those very specific and unique academic programs and supports for students like peer mentors, they're very important for retention because our advisors are constantly describing those services to current students. And we have to constantly promote those those services, unique services to students to help retain them. But then it's our frontline admissions team, recruitment team, and our colleagues in the SIC, the Student Information Center, that have all of this information about these unique programs. So in a case-by-case basis, when they are speaking to a student interested in partnering with faculty to do research in life sciences or nutrition or history or the archives, right? All these great features that we have, we are constantly promoting those features to high school guidance counselors, to students we're speaking to who are on the fence and they're not sure if LaGuardia is for them or not. So those are all really particular, let's call them distinguishing features of LaGuardia that our professional recruitment staff and admission staff are well-versed in. Our advisors are well-versed in, and we're communicating those great features to both current students and prospective students.
Okay. This is for Gail. What is the enrollment target for the fall?
We're holding the enrollment target for fall 22 steady as we did for fall 21. So it will be the same target that we had in fall 21 for fall 22.
Okay.
Gail, why don't you say the number?
12,000.
12,000. Just so everybody knows, and I asked, sorry to put you on the spot, but Rochelle was going to do it if I didn't do it. The reason I want people to know that number is I already showed you a slide that explained that we're at about 10,500 students now for the spring semester, 10,500. And we firmly believe that this spring and summer, we have this opportunity to start to rebuild our enrollment. So we're going to go from 10,500 now to 12,000. You know, with KYDEX advertising campaign La Mega, maybe it'll go even higher, but to go to at least 12,000 by the fall. That is the goal. And again, as Gail pointed out, that was the goal for the fall last year. We did a little better than that. But then we really got hit in that fall to spring transition where we are now. So we're going to rebuild and then rebuild and then rebuild.
Yes, thanks. This question is for you, President Adams. The credits for prior learning work is an invaluable initiative to support our students with college completion. They will come from different walks of life with an abundance of valuable experiences. We also have many students that speak alternative languages. How will the CLEP, the CLEP exams, be utilized to support students with achieving college credit? Can financial support be provided for the courses associated with CLEP exams?
Yes, yes, and yes. There are a suite of exams that are recognized by CUNY across the system that if one scores on that exam at the right level, one automatically gets the credit to be applied to the degree. You want to, obviously, it's best if it's actual credit for a degree requirement as opposed to elective credit. And you have to make sure it's credit that will transfer appropriately when the student transfers to a senior college. These have been technical issues in the past where credit for prior learning has not worked that well in the CUNY system. So you have to make sure the credit is on the associate degree transcript appropriately, and then that it is honored at the point of transfer to the senior college. And in the case of the fee, the cost of some of those exams like CLEP, which is language proficiency, yes, we will use LaGuardia resources from the foundation or otherwise to, in fact, our Robin Hood funding helps us with this, to make sure that that fee is never an obstacle to giving that exam. And what you need to do, what we'll be doing with this new office, is making sure we have an alignment between those exams and specific degrees. You know, we've done some of this, again, we've piloted it already in ACE with at least a half a dozen training programs where we already have, for example, in health sciences, if you take our pharm tech or our phlebotomy, some of our non-credit health sciences programs, they already equate, thanks to Chair Phil Gimber and program directors in health sciences, to academic credit for certain programs. And we need to do more of that where you connect the credit for prior learning award to a specific degree. We have at least 64 programs or 60 majors. And that the credits land on that transcript and the student moves ahead. So we'll be using a whole suite of these exams and other mechanisms to award credit for prior learning. Janice Carlin, by the way, has been a pioneer at LaGuardia for many, many years. She's a professor in business administration, and she's led this work for a long time. We're simply taking Janice's good work and institutionalizing it with major support from Robin Hood and the foundation to do something that has not been done successfully in CUNY at scale. And we're going to scale it up, and we're going to have a model, and we're going to bring in a lot of new students as a result.
Oh, wow. Thank you. And this is for KYDEX. Is there an effort being made to ask that the academic departments become more involved with recruitment? That is, the departmental contact information is not listed anywhere on the website, particularly on the individual web pages.
Yes, web pages are being reviewed to make sure that the information is relevant for potential student as well as current student. And for information that is not listed, we contact each department for update information. And again, our marketing campaigns are going straight to a custom built landing page with the specific content and information that the student are looking for. So we make sure that the information is listed and updated on our landing pages.
Nice. We have another question here. Are we planning to assist students with balances from any college or just LaGuardia within the proposed initiative, Credits for Success? I think that's for you, President Adams.
Yeah, no, we will help students with outstanding balances no matter what college they come from. They don't have to be from LaGuardia. Okay.
And can we advertise the Dreamer Scholarship to prospective high school students? This scholarship may help undocumented and DACA status students in paying for college. Gail, is that for you?
I'm not familiar with the scholarship that you just mentioned, but we do have a resource center, C109, where students are able to access all scholarships as well as federal and state aid, and staff are there to assist them with the completion of those applications.
And also, I just want to add to it that we do use organic data. So we organic social media to advertise the Dream and Scholarship and that kind of information or any benefit that the college is offering for students. So it's not part of our advertising, but it is promoted through our social channel as well.
Oh, thank you. So it's 1:06, but we just have like 2 more questions and maybe we could end then. So this question is, based on our outreach to Spanish speaking students, will we increase the number of Spanish speaking staff? I guess that's you, President Adams.
See,
Okay.
no, it's a serious answer to that. We need to have language proficiency throughout our staff, not just in Spanish, but in many of the languages from communities across Queens, and where our students come from. So yes, we are a Hispanic serving institution, and Hispanic students make up by far 44%, the largest block of students from any one background. But to really be successful, it's not just Spanish, Rochelle. It's a host of other languages from across Queens: Cantonese, Mandarin, Punjabi, Urdu, Hindi. The list goes on and on. Korean, Russian. The more we have language proficiency, not just at the front end in recruitment, but in how we support our students once they're here, and we can speak to them and make them feel at home, valued, and comfortable, the more powerful the big LaGuardia embrace, the LaGuardia hug. And again, making this place special to students so they want to stay and succeed and then tell their friends.
Thank you. So this next question, we may have answered parts of it already, but maybe we could expand on our answers. How do we reach out to students at these high schools, especially the ones that graduated during COVID? Is there any coordination with the high schools to reach out to these graduates?
Gail, you want to do that?
Did you say Gail or you said Karen?
Yes, no, okay. I'm giving that one to you.
Okay, so most of our students at LaGuardia reside in Queens, and most of our students actually come from high schools like Newtown High School, John Brown High School, Long Island City. We do have a smaller segment of students that come from Brooklyn, Manhattan, and the Bronx. But based on the marketing strategies that we have in play, we're certainly broadening our scope in terms of reaching multiple and more students.
And
I would add to whoever put the question in the chat, Rochelle, it's a very important issue that we're looking at. I mean, normally, this is before COVID, there were about 68,000 high school graduates at DOE high school graduates each June across New York City, a good number of them in Queens. Mm-hmm. For 2 years in a row, those students had virtual, online high school, for good or for ill. That's almost 140,000 students. Let's assume the students that are graduating this spring, they will have had this last senior year back on campus. And so they're recovering, right? But if you think about what you used to call the summer slide, students who fall off in terms of math and reading skills over the summer, as an example, there is a huge phenomenon out there I am very worried about that I call simply the COVID slide, that the effect on student progress, on student learning during all those high school pandemic semesters, 3 of them, right? And how do we reach out to those students? Because they're not in school now. The data says they're not going to CUNY, and most are not working. And the mayor has said it's 250,000 students. So that's 100,000 more than I say. I'll go with his number. we've got to reach out to them, Rochelle, and we've got to do things that bring them back to LaGuardia or whichever school to get them back on an educational pathway. It's a very important, it's an opportunity, yes, but more than that, it's an obligation. We have to do that work.
Yeah.
Rochelle, I want to go back to that question about the dream, because I think there may be a confusion regarding what is perceived as a scholarship. So the Jose Peralta Dream Act, it's an act, allows for undocumented students and DACA students to apply for state aid so that they would become eligible for tuition assistance program and the part-time TAP program. It's not applicable to federal programs. So I wanted to make that distinction so that students are aware that federal criteria are different from the state criteria when it comes to financial aid programs, and it's not always the same. But it is available to students. They apply directly with New York State, and the New York State Department determines their eligibility and forwards that information to Student Financial Services.
And Michelle, if I may, I beg your pardon, but a footnote to that, Gail and I talk about this a lot, is that if we have students who are undocumented or people who want to apply to LaGuardia, right, and their immigration status is such that they cannot access federal state financial aid, we can help them with the foundation dollars we've raised through the campaign. We've been doing that for years, but we're now in a much better position to do it. And that can be important in some cases, again, for a current LaGuardia student who has a relative who may have come into Queens, is living there with them at home and is undocumented. That student could come here if they're academically ready and qualified, and we could help them with support from the foundation.
One more question. Will there be any tours offered by LaGuardia regarding the CUNY Explorers program opportunity for middle and high schoolers to stimulate these particular groups? President Adams, I don't, is that for you?
I'll give it to Gail, but the answer is yes. Even if she says no, we have to do it. Have to, this starts at 8th grade, 7th grade, everything we can do. We have a huge program, SYEP, right? We're one of the leaders in the city, Summer Youth Employment Program. And people say to me, oh, but President Adams, those students are younger. You know what? They may be young now, but they won't be young forever. They will be college ready and potential LaGuardia students before you know it. And we want to be front of mind in those young people, front of mind. So when someone says, are you thinking of going to college? They say, sure, I'm going back to LaGuardia where I did SYEP.
There's a final question in the chat, but it's not about enrollment. So I'm not sure we want to take it. Would you like to hear it though?
We have to. That's the way this works. We call this open mic night, and I take every question that comes in.
Okay. President Adams, I understand from speaking with colleagues at other institutions that there are talks of CUNY adopting a flex schedule post-COVID, which has already been provided as an option in SUNY. Are there any updates on this at LaGuardia?
Flex schedule. No update yet. We just had 2 weeks ago, we just had the March meeting. We meet every month. The CUNY presidents meet with the chancellor and the leadership team from the central office. It did not come up at the March meeting. Perhaps it will come up at the April meeting, which is in a couple of weeks, early April. So I will have my ear out for that and share any information I get about that possibility.
Okay. So I think we're bringing it to a close. Any final announcements? President Adams?
No, I want to thank you, Rochelle, Professor Isaac, for, as usual, doing a terrific job. We had a slightly different format this time because of our special guests, Caria Munoz and Dr. Gail Back-Sharrett. I hope everybody out, we had a big audience, which was always good to see, and I hope everybody found it helpful. If you submitted a question in the chat, I think we got to all of them, but if a question somehow we skipped over, we will take it and get back to you. And if anything we raised today, and if those of you watching this later, the recording on YouTube, any questions, just email my office, email Caridad, myself, Rochelle, and we'll get back to you. And we look forward to doing this again soon. Have a great semester.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.